Today once more we're going to look at those games that the world forgot about. I think I have a quite diverse selection prepared, so join me on the trip down the memory lane. Cannonade, as the title may give it away, is about shooting your cannon. But not in a nefarious way with destruction in mind or at someone. It's not a game of that sort. In fact, it's a real-time puzzler where you shoot your cannon at the ball that's moving about the level to change its direction so that it would get to the exit. You can move the cannon around all 4 gameboard sides to manipulate aforementioned ball and other level elements. Some stages are timed, others aren't, but all are pretty fun if you don't mind your brain muscle to exercise a little. Where brain muscle actually is in your head? Don't worry about it and definitely don't look it up, it's there, trust me. It's between that bigger bit and that small one in the back, just tucked under it, sticking out a little on the left. So don't worry about it, I wouldn't lie to you now, would I? Each level is littered with numerous different objects, some of which have to be destroyed, while others rearranged for the ball to have clear path to the exit. There are some special tiles in Cannonade too, adding to the playability, and they can hold the ball, make it change its direction, teleport it to another point on the gameboard, or downright destroy it. Sounds and graphics are not great, and I'm putting it nicely. For 1993 I really would have expected more. Still, they serve their purpose, which is being the background to the puzzling mechanic, which in itself is, well, troublesome. At least to explain. I really want to like Cannonade, I do. The idea is something I can get behind, but the way the game works is a bit disappointing, to me at least. There's a slight noticeable but hard to gauge delay between when you press shoot and when the shot actually leaves the cannon. The timer in those timed levels is rather unforgiving, so the game ends up being pretty fun in those without it and something you dread attempting in those that do have it. So approach it at your own discretion. Machiavelli the Prince is a sorta unofficial upgraded re-release of a year prior's Merchant Prince. Sorta because there was some kind of a feud between the two companies responsible for it, developer Holistic Design and publisher Quantum Quality Productions. And in the end that falling out spawned Machiavelli the Prince that you're watching now. And since we've mentioned the publisher, I gotta say that Quantum Quality Productions is a brave name. With a name like that I expect quality and nothing else. I mean, they're not great, good or even premium quality productions. They're Quantum. And that raises my expectations astronomically. Fortunately, Machiavelli the Prince is better than Merchant Prince and it's named appropriately too. Why? Well, in theory, it's a historical trading simulation where you're in control of one of the most influential families in the 14th century Venice. Machiavelli the Prince can be played alone against CPU, which I do not recommend unless you've no other choice, or with others. And in that last mode is where it shines, because you not only get to telegraph your superiority over the others you play with by making better and more profitable trade routes and business decisions, but you can also decide to play low and dirty by publicly slandering them, assassinating their representatives, attacking their units, or even burning down their buildings. So, doing the titular Machiavellian shenanigans. Sounds fun? Good, cause you can also bribe senators, purchase for the lack of a better word, cardinals to support you spreading word about you controlling a holy and blessed resource, regardless if anything like that even exists, because it doesn't. But whatever you wanna think about Machiavelli the Prince, it's not an easy game to classify. On one hand, it's your straight up trading / empire building fair, but on another it's a diplomacy-filled political simulation or even an exploration strategy. It's a title unlike many, short of its earlier iteration of Merchant Prince, and it's one that's really worth checking out, if you're into strategy and management games that is. Fury of the Furries is an absolute gem that should have spawned a whole series of follow-ups. It's one of the most, if not the most, ambitiously designed and well thought out platformer I've ever seen. You're controlling 4 differently colored furry characters, each with a unique skill set. The red one can chew basically through anything, biting all the walls, floors and anything else in his way. The yellow can shoot basic and charged shot, both quite useful in offense against hordes of cute but deadly enemies and more importantly in certain puzzles. Blue furry can swim, dive and shoot bubbles. And finally green furry, he has a grapple and a line. And ladies and gentlemen, he works these two like a charm, crossing over large stretches of spiky obstacles, going where no other furry went or could go before, and pulling things that could, at least in this game, only be pulled via line. All in all, you've got to utilize all these skills to complete increasingly more difficult levels in variously themed worlds. Each and every stage is a little puzzle, in latter zones spanning huge areas, requiring sharp thinking and often godlike dexterity all at the same time. But having worked out when and how to use every one of those little colorful rascals is really rewarding. And a cherry on top of this already sweet cake of a game are bonus areas hidden in every single level. at times even nested within each other, like some kind of crazy coins-filled ration nesting dolls. Best of all, difficulty growth in Furry of the Furries is very gradual, allowing you to learn all the tropes before being dropped in deep water. That said, make no mistake misjudging the title for what it is. As I mentioned earlier, it's a very much a game of skills as much as a game of wits. Easy to get into and devilishly hard to master. You can learn more about it in a complete review video of it that I have on my channel. It may be for Amiga's version, but the game is identical on both systems, so everything said there will apply to PC Sport too. For all intents and purposes, Legend of Myra is your boulder dash with few new features, a story, and released a little too late. Cause while it's a pretty decent and fun game in itself, I can't escape the feeling that it should have dropped 2-3 years earlier. Story-wise, for whatever the reason, in the future humanity decided to get rid of all the rabbits. Perhaps the cute factor was too much to bear and they just had to go. Or maybe they multiplied to the point they've started being dangerous to the environment. Who knows? The point is someone out there decided they had to go. And for another unclear to me reason, it was decided that the best way to do it is to store all of the world's cabbage underground. I mean, if you think about rabbits, do you think of carrots or cabbages? Anyway, you play as Myra, one of the last few rebellious bunnies that is not going to stand by and watch his kind be cut from a sweet cabbage supply. He's gonna do something about it, and by extension of that, if you decide to play the game, you will do something about it too. So, you have to puzzle your way through 120 levels collecting cabbages, and if you get them all, you'll complete the game. For the most part, standard mechanics of Boulder Dash apply to Legend of Myra. There's dirt that you dig through, there are rocks that are susceptible to gravity, and there are enemies out to get you. You can kill those with either rock that you drop on them or one of the few available weapons. Because yeah, in Legend of Myra you get to run and gun too. You can carry a gun, flamethrower, rocket launcher or even bombs. And you're a bunny. I know, we should prepare in real life, cause you never know. Was the weapon addition necessary? Definitely not to keep the original Boulder Dash formula fun, but perhaps devs wanted to get their game to stick out. And they succeeded, it does, like a sore thumb. And while the variety is fun, the ideas in Legend of Myra are just a bit over the top, and after a little while become feeling too ridiculous and tiring. It's not a bad game, don't get me wrong, but it's not particularly good one either. Before there was Harry Potter, we had Magic Boy, a boy that lived. Nope. A boy that wanted to be a wizard, and his name was Hewlett Packard. Now hold on a sec, let me check my notes. I see. It came to my attention that it was actually Hewlett, not Packard. So Hewlett goes about making his dream come true in a 2D vertically scrolling platformer. Story-wise, you're an apprentice for a wizard, you're talented, no doubt about that, but also very young and clumsy. So one night after working late, you tipped over a hidden trapdoor and released your Master Wizard's collection of crazy animals and monsters. Now you gotta recapture them as if nothing ever happened so that you could continue your studies and not be banished by the Master Wizard. So you have to stun the monsters with your magic wand, then pick them up and then send them back to the basement they came from. The game takes place over 4 worlds: Sandland, Wet World, Plastic Place and Future World. Each of these is divided into 8 levels for a total of 32, and there are also additional 32 bonus levels, for a whopping total of 64 stages. There are plenty numerous environmental obstacles in the game and different pickups. Some can upgrade your shot to hit through walls or shoot up and down, others multiply it or even reward letters that when collected to spell extra do just that, make you extra. Extra cool, extra fun, and most importantly, extra tough. Oh no, it seems I've mixed the scripts again. I really have to save up for an assistant cause clearly doing it all on my own doesn't work. I'm too scatterbrained. So yeah, collecting all letters, awards and extra life obviously. Graphics and sound-wise, Magic Boy is really good provided you run it on a system with VGA and Sound Blaster, it feels like a console game then. But if you try to launch it on anything below the specs, it will sound and look like an afterthought to the full experience. As if the assets were quickly converted to lower fidelity without putting too much attention to it. Is that the case? I don't know, but that's how it looks like. Pangea Return to Planet Earth is first episode in a planned 2 of an interactive science fiction story set in 21st century, years after humanity developed faster-than-light travel and explored many neighboring galaxies meeting 4 distinct alien species. And it's told in a comic strip format. As far as it's known, second episode never released, perhaps because of the first one's reception, which mind you was not a bad game, just not popular enough to guarantee a follow-up. So whenever you don't know what's the reason behind something, in this case lack of a follow-up, it had to be money, or lack thereof, because of low sales. I obviously have no proof of that whatsoever, but that's what I presume. The story is set in a dystopian future where a mega corporation called Pangea absorbed all countries under its wing and basically governs all of the world the way it sees appropriate. So all the population is divided into three groups: the privileged and productive, who are worthy of protection and servitude in the eyes of the corporation; the expendables, living in the old, long-abandoned cities that double down as penal colonies these days; and finally the rebels called the moles, living underground now that the Earth's surface is hardly suitable to sustaining life of any kind. Clearly, the latter two groups are of no use to the corporation, so they're deemed unwanted and treated as such. You play as Duck, not one that says quack quack, but one spelled D-A-K. And since your father was once a leader of the rebels, you're asked to return to Earth to help with negotiations between them and the expendables. A treaty between the two sideline factions could prove an issue to the order led by the corporation, however, so it's important that it goes smooth. Pangea Return to Planet Earth is just that. It's a story of you and your outwardly companion coming back to Earth and your preparations to meet with the leader of the expandables in prison city called Purgatory. Pangea is very story heavy, so if you're someone who doesn't enjoy reading through walls of text and putting facts and information together, it's definitely not for you. If you do, however, then branching plot and many decisions that you'll make along the way may be something you'd actually enjoy. Personally, I'm not entirely sure that the game's worth playing anymore, now that we know that there's no conclusion to the storyline, but on the other hand we had Matrix, that ended up on the cliffhanger and released no sequels whatsoever after 1999, so... Prince of Evil is an outstanding top-down arcade game not unlike the famous Amiga's Chaos engine, but played in single player only and in a different setting. You're a legendary Chinese warrior. I mean, I'm not sure you are. You might be, but would you even tell me? Coming out as one would be of no benefit to you, really. So, maybe you are, maybe you're not, but in this game you play as one. And you're hacking and slashing your way through dozens of different enemies and creatures based in Chinese mythology, all the way to the final Prince of Evil. The game offers many unique weapons, each specifically useful against a certain type of an enemy, and it's worth learning what works best where, as while they can be carried and not used when not necessary, they have a very limited number of charges, after using of which they are gone. So even if memorization of this is not required per se, it helps a lot to make the gameplay easier. Other than the melee weapons, you also encounter various other pickups like ammo for projectile weapons, ginseng for health, treasures and quest items. From time to time you'll stand face to face with much stronger boss foe than all the trash mobs you mow through, and this can truly be challenging and are usually very interestingly designed. Dragon is one that especially comes to mind. I think it's obvious by now, as you're watching the footage, that both sounds and graphics are excellent, and the gameplay loop is really enjoyable. But if that hasn't came across like it, let me assure you that Prince of Evil is great and deserved much more recognition than it ever had. And its obscurity is a riddle to me, cause a quality game like that usually tends to spawn large fan followings. Perhaps the reason was that the developer was Taiwanese and did not care to promote the game abroad as much. Perhaps, as we will never know. What's important though is that it's probably the second best game in this video after Fury of the Furries, and you should check it out if you get a chance. Baryon is a definition of a hidden gem. Why it ended up being virtually unknown and forgotten by the gaming world is something I do not understand in the slightest. And it's also a vertically scrolling shoot 'em up. It features two different ships to choose from, each with its own unique set of upgradable weapons, missiles both regular and homing, with the earlier being stronger and latter more convenient, and a bomb and a shield, which hopefully are more than self-explanatory. There's also many different enemies, and they seem to be going at you all the time from all sides relentlessly as if their own life meant nothing to them. And if you play your cards right, excuse me, I meant if you aim your shots right and use bombs wisely, that's precisely what their lives will be. That said, don't underestimate Baryon, as it's definitely not one of the easier shooters out there. On the contrary, it will test both your reactions and how well you adapt to ever-changing on-screen action. Come to think of it, this may have been one of the factors of its obscurity. Shower version consists of only one level, which is not much to familiarize yourself with the title and decide if it's something you'd like to invest money in. And the full version has only 6 of these, so I suppose you don't get much for your money either. Well, maybe not in terms of length, cause when it comes to quality it's nearly as good as Tyrion. Baryon looks really good, with differently designed enemies and stages, tons of explosions on screen at once, and overall clean but detailed approach to presentation. Sounds are pretty decent too, some of them very heavy, perhaps a bit too much, but it all adds up to the fun factor in the end. Mixture of great graphics and decent sounds with fun and engaging combat. If you manage to find Baryon somewhere for a decent price and are into shoot 'em ups, it's a no-brainer. Go and get it. If you don't care for these though, it's gonna be just one of many other similar shooters to you. Shooting Gallery is precisely that, shooting gallery. There's no plot, no story, no progression of any kind, and no target to aim for. Other than the obvious ones moving on the screen, that is. In fact, it looks like a simple early 8-bit game lifted to the 16-bit presentation and sold without any gameplay improvements whatsoever. If from the get-go it sounds like something you won't be into, you're more than likely right. It's not a game that tries to be anything special, at least I haven't noticed anything of sort. It does not, however, exist for no reason. I actually see a very strong usage scenario for it, at least for someone like myself. Let me explain. I have thousands of games, literally, and probably even more retro games, and while most of these are emulated today by either platform-specific software or DOSBox for PC stuff, I have a lot available at hand at any given time. More than one person ever should or would ever need. So more often than not, when I find myself with a little free time and I want to play something older, I find it difficult to decide what. And I tend to spend a lot of time pondering what I'm in a mood for. And this is where the shooting gallery comes in play. It's an excellent palette cleaner, for the lack of a better word. It's a great game to quickly fire up between other games from a shortcut in your retro launcher of choice, just to demolish some moving targets aimlessly with your mouse, waiting for an inspiration, for an idea what to play, scoring meaningless points. And if used as that, it's more than worth its size on your hard drive, which even compared to today's pictures you take with your phone is laughably small. There are 7 levels in the game, 6 are sorta natural progression of each other, being very simple but also similar to one another, and last 7th is not your typical shooting gallery, but more of a shoot the cowboys and spare the innocent fare of sorts. Still extremely simple and not engaging your brain in the slightest, but a tiny bit more interesting than the earlier ones. So, shooting gallery is not a great game. But in the same time, it's one of the best single-purpose titles, realized perfectly to serve that one particular basic purpose. Knights of Xentar is a Japanese role-playing game, a third part in Dragon Knight series that were never released in the West, and it's very heavily leaning on anime-style eroticism, which obviously you won't see in this video as it would have get both blocked and demonetized, not necessarily in that order. The game starts with you being robbed, out of your precious legendary armor, magical sword and even your clothes. So you have to get some money fast to get yourself back on your feet. Luckily the mayor has a quest for you that will see you traveling the world, fighting and defeating various often odd enemies, meeting beautiful women and along the way learning about your true self. You'll meet characters that will join your quest along the way and will help you succeed. How come I'm so sure that you will? Because I've seen you do it hundreds of times already and you hardly ever failed. At least not when I was watching. Anyway, you and your troop of hentai warriors travel the world on an overworld map while the combat is played in a very similar setting as in early Final Fantasy games. Enemies and your party members attack automatically in real time, but you can pause it at any moment to give commands, use items and cast spells or change a preset AI behavior. There are 8 attack strength levels, with stronger ones requiring more time to pull off, so there's a strategic layer to battles where you need to gauge when to risk slower but more powerful and possibly game-changing attack and when to stick to faster but weaker jabs. Knights of Xentar is full of sexual imagery and nudity, but it's very soft for today's standards, even if it was very controversial back then. All that, however, is just an era-humorous background and neither takes the foreground of gameplay nor influences it in any meaningful way. That said, it should be noted that sexual favors in this game are like currency in others, and more often than not you will be paid with those for services and rescues rendered. Similarly, instead of taverns and inns, you'll replenish your HP and MP by having sex. Knights of Xentar is one of the weirdest JRPGs I've seen. Arguably, I've not seen as many on DOS as on other platforms, but Xentar is odd one way or another. Oh, and along the way you'll get to save Red Riding Hood from being abused by a wolf and Snow White by 7 dwarfs. It's a good game if you like JRPGs and don't mind the boob here and there, sometimes in least expected places. Boob here, boob there, boobs everywhere. So, another 10 obscure DOS games. Some great, some less so, but all special in their own way. What do you think of them? Any sparked your interest? Perhaps you knew of some all along and they were not obscure to you whatsoever. Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, make sure to hit like and subscribe, it helps a lot. Around 70% of you are still not subscribed and there's no way of knowing if YouTube will decide to recommend the next video to you, other than by subscribing, that is. If you want to be 100% sure that it does, however, hit the bell button too. Then when the video's out, you will get a friendly notification letting you know about it. If you'd like to support this channel, Patreon subscriptions and YouTube memberships are a great help and will go towards replacing my editing PC eventually. You also get access to all new videos a day early and will get to see updates on what's coming to and changing on the channel. If you can't or don't want to do that though, likes and subscribes are awesome too. Most of all, however, I would like to take a second here and thank all the YouTube Let's Play and playthrough creators, from whose videos short bits were taken for this one as a video background to my commentary. They're amazing, and thanks to their efforts, retro community can prevail for years longer and in better form than it could have otherwise. So thank you. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.